All right, what's up, guys? Magus here. Today we're going to go over exo charts. We're going to talk a little bit about how I have it set up, how I'm using it, and how you can navigate it yourself. Essentially, everything that we're going to be operating off of is going to be default settings too. Apart from the levels that you see that I have marked out and the color changes, you should have the same screen as mine. So, jumping right into it, the first thing we're going to go over is just the generalized settings tab. This is going to be good for changing settings on value area and balance point of control, so on and so forth. The rect is the liquidation tabs, right? So how many contracts do you want to be the minimum to show for liquidations? Personally, I don't really use that. Um, I don't think I actually ever changed any settings from the defaults in here. Next, we've got the colors tab, which is pretty useful. I actually think it's really important that you have things color coordinated because, at least for myself, especially with in real time volume analysis, I like to use colors to simplify what I'm looking at. So, I might not necessarily have to read the number, but just seeing the color will give me the same indication. Find that pretty effective. So yeah, you can change all the colors for all on the on screen, all the indicators basically. That's going to be the components tab. For look and feel, you're going to have the background and the axis labeling and all that stuff. Take the time to make sure everything looks good. Here's the templates tab. This one's great because when you have templates that you really like, you just go ahead and save them. You can either create a new template and save it, or you can just override a previous one when you make changes, because that is inevitable. You definitely will be making a lot of changes and tuning these things every day as you get more comfortable with them. So that's pretty much all the aesthetic kind of stuff right there. Jumping into the first on-screen thing, we've got the markers. So this essentially is just going to be marking the relevant levels. So it's got a bunch of different options in here. You can do last price, developing day, previous day, all these. Essentially, all I'm going to be using it for is developing week and developing month, at least on TPO. Um, Pretty straightforward. It's just nice to know the value area high, value area low on the monthly and the weekly. Um, they provide, it can be great confluence, right? Because I have these two blue levels that are, you know, very important levels for me at this current time. And it's great to throw on the monthly and weekly and see that, yeah, they pretty much line up. So, great confluence there. I would end this part by saying that the developing day and the previous day are really great for intraday stuff. So when you're doing real time volume analysis, whether it's through volume or tick or trend reversal, the previous day and the week and the developing day are great for that stuff. I don't generally keep those lines on my screen. I find that they are distracting and I end up having way too many lines. Okay, so just going to go ahead and zoom in for the next couple parts. Make sure we can see. Okay. So next we have the value area. It's pretty hard to tell with the current settings. It'll be a lot more obvious when we turn the TPO on, but just it highlights the value area on whatever candle type you're displaying. So when you're displaying something like a delta cluster, it might be more obvious on the volume profile. Yeah, it is. There you go. So you see the value area in the center. Same thing with the point of control. Pretty great, straightforward stuff. Everyone knows what POC is by now. You can click on the tabs and there are some minor changes that you can make. The CPL and CPR, these are your left and right, um, composite profile, I guess is what they're calling it, but essentially it can be whatever you want. So I think, yeah, I have a delta profile set up on it, but your options are pretty great because you can do volume profile, delta profile, bid ask, you can do your clusters, and then you can do your depth of markets. Um, Depending on what you're doing, you're going to want to do different things, right? So I find with TPO stuff that the profile options being the volume and delta profile are pretty great. But when I'm using Exo for my intraday setups, I'm definitely have a DOM going. I find that really useful, especially because a lot of times now I'm cycling through the relevant exchanges, and it's nice to just have it quickly and easily just populate. I can see the DOM, can watch the DOM for a little bit in relation to the tape and the print, and get a good gauge on what's going on. This is your right one, so that's the same. And then here we go, gonna get into the important thing here. We're gonna turn on the TPO. Okay, so again with the TPO, not only do we have the value area, but we also have the point of control highlighted. Pretty straightforward stuff. Go into the settings, we'll go over a couple things here. Let's see, none of this is really going to have too much relevance. Expanding the clusters can be really great. Um, you also can do that individually. You don't need to expand all of them. It's very useful. General elements. Oh, I'm going to skip ahead real quick to the lettering. I do not like having the letters on. Okay, going back over to TPO settings. So in elements, this is a great one right here. Initial balance, so it shows you the first hour range. So it should be 2 candles since we're using 30-minute. That is standard TPO settings. A lot of systems can either use the initial balance as the setup itself or its confluence for the setup. So definitely take a look at that. You can turn the lines on so it has it marked out, or you could just have it like that. Or you could have the labels for the initial balance high and low. I don't really keep this on, but it is definitely pretty good. Something else that's really great is the open and close indicators. I don't like the arrows personally. I just keep the little colored boxes. Does fine. Here's all the color settings. So I just use just regular um, normal coloring, but you can use heat map and you could just use mono. The heat map's probably pretty cool, but never really taken the time to look at it. This is one setting that I actually thought I had turned on. Apparently I don't. The cluster fading. So essentially, it's just showing you, since we only have one color for the within the value area and for the extremes, the shading of the color depicts the time. So if you're pretty familiar with TPO, this isn't really something you're going to need. That's probably why I had it turned off. But it does make the visualization somewhat more simple. So something to consider for people, especially if you're still in the process of familiarizing yourself with these tools. So point of control and value area. I like to have the value area lines extended, pretty straightforward. I'm actually going to turn off that right there. I don't need to know. Um, I don't need to read that. Same thing with the point of control price. I'm actually going to turn that off as well and keep that off. I don't need to see that. You can have the extended array, which is nice. Again, I don't need that. I like to keep my things neat and organized and really not have too many things going on my screen if possible. So that's why you'll see that even though I might use a lot of these things, like the marker, for instance, is a great example. I might use the marker, but I'm really never going to keep it turned on. Okay, finishing it up on the TPO settings, there's the session split, which is really nice because down here you can turn on the sessions. So you can label the different sessions if that's something that you're into. The market profile statistics is also really good. You can basically have all sorts of crazy labels on here. I don't really use any of them. Here is the singles and tails. So that's what these boxes are. So it is going to mark out all these singles and tails for me. Yeah, I have them all turned on. So that's really great. So anytime you have either a tail or single prints, it's just going to make these boxes for you. Um, I really, really like having this. Just makes it that much easier for me to scan effectively and take a look at what's going on. I think that does it for the TPO. Oh, here's the volume profile. Actually, this is also really good. So Um, Real quick, what I use it for is I just use it for delta essentially. So I'll have a volume profile, just to have a general idea, but I have it just, monocolor. So I'm not really paying attention to buying and selling, and then I'll have the delta overlaid on that. I find that to be pretty great. It varies from exchange to exchange, and to be honest, I don't really know why I'm charting on them. I've just been on them for a long time, and um, you'll notice the more you look at this kind of stuff that certain exchanges play certain roles. Binance gets a lot of hate for their disgusting order flow. However, they do play an important role in the auction, and I'm not gonna say what that is, but what I will say is that if you stare at these things and you cycle through the exchanges, you'll start to pick up on which exchanges are doing what, and they all have different roles. So it's important to make a note of all that. Okay, so that pretty much covers it for the TPO stuff. On the top left over here, we have all of our exchanges that we can go through. Exo's done a great job of adding in a lot of um, alternative tickers. That's pretty great. We even have a lot of, altcoins, and frankly, we even have a lot of shitcoins in here at this point. So, um, I do find it extremely effective to take this type of approach that I would use on large cap liquid coins. You can take the same approach to your less liquid mid caps and whatnot too. So if you have the ability to chart like this, it does work. Okay, then we have our candle display type basically. So for TPO, we're just going to chill with the 30-minute default. I will say casually that you can use alternative time frames, and they definitely serve their purposes. I don't think EXO works with any of the point and figure, trend reversal, delta volume, or the range charts. I don't think it works with that, but to be honest, I haven't even tested it. Um, I know the TPO can be displayed I don't think it can be displayed with these volume metrics, but I know that TPO can be displayed through point and figure. But it's not something I'm going to use. Just don't need it. Okay, the cluster type. So because we have TPO turned on, it's going to automatically pick this. But there are all these different cluster types basically, and this is going to be your method of displaying the data. So take some time to go through these. You can make some pretty good intraday setups with some of these tools, so take a look at that. I will likely make another video to talk about intraday stuff at some point. The text. So this is where, if let's say you had a delta profile, maybe you want to see the imbalances or the bid ask, or maybe you just want to see the delta over the delta profile. These are great. I don't use any on my TPO. I don't use any overlay. I just don't particularly care much for it. The candles, where you can have all the different candle types, is pretty great. I will occasionally use this with TPO because sometimes it's nice to just overlay the candle casually like this. Yeah, like that. Just casually see the candles and see how it's reacting with the delta and with the TPO. Um, it can be useful. Not really something that I use very much. Okay, and then lastly, we're going to have all the additional things that we can display. So straightforward, we just have our basic volume, T count. I'm pretty sure that's trade count, not something that I use. The rect is the liquidations. That looks atrocious. Let us go ahead and do this while we're here anyways. We're just going to call it, we'll do 5 mil. Computer's lagging a lot. You love it. Well, I forgot how many liquidations that Binance has, so that's not going to be enough. Let's do 15 mil. Insane that there's still so many liquidations present. So when we turn off TPO and let's go in and take a look at the Delta clusters. So basically, what this is just showing us is liquidation. So if you get it What you would want to do with this ideally is you would want to get it to the threshold so that it's showing you the extreme amounts of liquidations. Now, Binance again is not a good example for this because even though they don't have the most open interest, I think that they have by far and away the most liquidations nowadays. Don't quote me on that because I'm not entirely sure, but yeah, I do know for sure that Binance is a top contender for liquidations, and for some context, not too long ago when MEX still had the most open interest, MEX would have double the open interest that Binance would have, but Binance would have the same amount of liquidations on the big moves up and down, which was absolutely crazy to see. I don't know why it defaulted turning the letters on. So that's volume, trade count, liquidations. This is the just basic footprint. So by default, it's just going to give you volume, delta, and CVD. You can come in here and change it though, and by just adding a column, and then you can change it to whatever you want. There's a lot of really cool little options in here. Take some time to go through that. The trade size tab here, which is also good, is just going to show you, it's going to break up the large orders so you can see the large orders that went through. And these, to, follow this up by saying that these kind of tools really, you're not really going to want to use with TPO. Personally, I don't. Maybe you use open interest in net longs, net shorts, but most of these tools that we're going over right here are going to be more for your intraday setup, but we're just going to go over them because we're already here. CS, what is that? I don't remember what the CS stands for, but essentially it's just showing you the total volume and the delta for the candles. So if we were to take off TPO, it'll make a little more sense there. Yeah. So it's showing you the total volume and then the delta for the candles. And that's going to change depending on your candle display type. Um, Turn TPO back on. Real quick, because I did skip this and I want to make sure I go over this. I skipped over tick size by accident. Super, super important because the tick size that you're using to display the TPO is going to greatly skew how you're looking at things. Um, it's essential that you pay attention to what tick size you're using relative to where we're at in price. So the perfect example was not that long ago, the price of Bitcoin was significantly lower. So when I'm charting Bitcoin and it's $7,000, I'm not going to use 50 ticks. I'm probably going to use more like 10 ticks, maybe 15, but probably was using 10 tick back then. And as Bitcoin moved up, you have to increase your tick size. So this is something that doesn't necessarily get talked about a lot, but regardless of what charting method you're using, if it has any sort of relevance to tick size, make sure you're changing your tick size as markets evolve, right? As volatility increases, as price increases, you need to adjust these kind of things, right? You wouldn't want the same tick size for a low volatile market where Bitcoin's $7,000 compared to now where we're swinging $100 and it doesn't even matter anymore. $100 back at 7,000 was a trade for me. Now $100 is not a trade anymore, if you catch my drift. So that's tick size. Definitely pay attention to that. You need to change it as time goes on. Don't get stagnant with your tick size. Okay, so we left off with this one. We're going to do the delta bars. Delta bar is pretty straightforward. It's just showing you for the candles that you have. It's just showing you the delta. You can change it so that um, this is CBD. The orange line is CBD. I don't remember my settings I have for this, and to be honest, I don't use these kind of tools on TPO. I use them somewhere else. We'll go over that in another video. So delta bar is pretty straightforward. Open interest also pretty straightforward. Net longs, net shorts. We'll go over this real quick because this is not what you would want it to look like, I don't think. You would probably want it to look like not in histogram mode. And not, okay, so essentially you want to turn off histogram mode, you want to turn short on, and you want to not probably, I would say most people don't want it to be based off of the session data, that you probably want it to be based off of the complete information. So I'm not going to go ahead and do it with net shorts, but it's the same exact settings. And this is great because it's showing you when shorts, this is for longs. So when longs are opening and closing. And for intraday stuff, these three tools combine: open interest, net longs, net shorts. I said that backwards, but same thing. Um, Great for intraday scalping. You can really gather a lot about what's going on and what the market participants are doing based off of these things. So that's open interest, net longs, net shorts. The last tool to go over here is the VWAP. Pretty straightforward. Everyone knows what a VWAP is by now. Last couple things to go over. I did make a point of the session split, which is also pretty great. We'll turn TPO back on, and you can see the session split. That's pretty nice. You can change the labels. You can change how the sessions are split. This is the hours tab. You have the X and Y grid. You have the crosshair. So when you're moving around, you don't have to have it. I generally like that. Main reason why I like it is just it's nice that when I scroll over this block and I could just see on the far right over here, I could see what the price is. That's really what I'm using it for. It just makes scanning a little bit easier. Last thing to really go over here is going to be the zoom on and off, which I do actually think is a great feature. So you can't see it, but it is on the right side of the screen. And when zoom is off, and you scroll down on your mouse, it's going to zoom in, and when you scroll up, it's going to zoom out like this, and vice versa. Now when the zoom is on, now um, it's a fixed setting, and I'm just zooming in or out on it. So that's a great setting. I actually didn't know about that one for a while. I found out about that recently, and I really, really like using it. So that pretty much does it for our basic introduction to Exo here. There's a lot of good stuff. I will definitely be doing follow-up videos because I'm realizing that I already, went on for 22 minutes here, and I didn't even really get into a lot of the good stuff that I want to go over. But that should be a good jumping off point for you to get your TPO set up and to start familiarizing yourself with this tool. So we're going to leave it at that. Thank you.